In this video, you're going to learn what Great Assistant is and how it can help you to hit the ground running working virtually from home as an executive assistant to an entrepreneur. I'm going to guess that your story sounds something like this. You're probably a stay-at-home mom. You probably worked in the regular work world for a handful of years, and then you had a baby or two, and you took a look at your options and you really said to yourself, hey, if there's any way that I could work from home, that would just give me so much flexibility that I would be able to take care of my kids and or maybe if they're a little bit older, be able to just volunteer by day or participate in their school lives while still keeping your resume up, making a few extra dollars, and maybe along the way have some adult conversation. If you've got a young baby, maybe you're just needing your adult brain to be used a little bit more before you go crazy. So obviously I'm not a mom, I'm a dude, but my virtual and executive assistant Sarah, she has a couple young kids, and so I've gotten to know intimately some of the realities that she faces, and probably there are a lot of the same realities that you face. I'm going to guess that you went online, and I'm going to guess that you typed in something like work from home jobs, or virtual assistant, something like that. And I'm going to guess that you ran into just an absolute avalanche of quote unquote opportunities. And I'm going to guess a lot of those opportunities really, as soon as you clicked on them and checked them out, really did not seem like legitimate opportunities at all. You probably ran into a lot of MLM, work from home, choose your own hours, network marketing, kind of questionable stuff. You probably ran into a bunch of sketchy stuff like, fill out surveys for $6 a survey or something like that. And you probably ran into some other stuff that just flat out looked like a scam, and quite possibly it was. So if you're feeling skeptical at this moment, I don't blame you. You have every reason in the world to feel skeptical. So that's probably what you went through. Then after that, you probably sifted and sorted through a handful of the quote-unquote opportunities and stumbled across our job posting. You probably found it to be very peculiar and very strange, and maybe in an odd way, kind of entertaining. This idea of having to apply red font, blue font, it was and the idea of somebody writing a job description that literally talks about how writing checklists for your husband is a good thing, that probably all stood out to you and you went, these guys seem a little different. I'm curious to know more. And then there's probably a good chance that you started to look us up. You looked up me, Tim Francis, or you looked up Profit Factory, and maybe you stumbled across our website, profitfactory.com, or you stumbled across our YouTube channel, and you saw that, hey, these people are actually legit. Tim's been a guest speaker at New York University, NYU in Manhattan. Maybe in some of our YouTube videos, you saw Sarah and I going back and forth in our interview, and you said, hey, this actually looks pretty damn good. So then from there, you probably said, hey, I'm going to apply. And let me tell you that just by the mere fact that you may be advancing to an interview, you're already in the top 2% of all the people who see our ads. So I'll just quickly draw this for you. If this right here is one of our job postings, there's hundreds of people who see one of our job postings. Of those hundreds of people who see our job postings, there's only about 8 to 11 people who actually take the time to apply. So here's the thing. I'm sure that at points you felt skeptical about working from home generally, and even when you looked at our ad, you're like, is this legit? Understand that we actually have the same question. Our same question to you is, are you legit? And are you serious about actually working from home? I think a lot of people like the romance and the idea of being, this idea of working from home. However, not enough people take it seriously enough to realize it's these are real businesses, and that your performance makes a big difference, good or bad, in the company that you work in. So you better be ready to focus, learn, and work hard in your work as an executive assistant, because it matters and it does make a big difference. Yes, you can still have work flexibility, working in the hours that suit you best. And perhaps there's days when you wouldn't be able to work at all because you've got childcare concerns. When it is time to work, though, we need you to show up and perform. So a lot of people, that's why we have this step of submitting via email, red font, blue font, and all the crazy hoops you have to jump through, is to see, are you actually interested in this, or is this just like a fleeting kind of idea that you heard about once and it seemed like fun and interesting, but you're not actually committed? So no kidding, 90% of people don't even make the effort to apply. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I'm not here to judge. I'm just here to say very few people actually make it to that step. Now, of everybody who applies, people who actually did the job accurately of completing the email right and submitting and all the details that we throw in there, of the 8 to 11 who apply, believe it or not, only 2 or 3 get it right. I know, it's mind-boggling. I mean, especially for you, because you've gotten to this step. The idea that so few people can actually accomplish that, it blew me away too. So then from there, the 2 to 3 people who actually fill it out properly then do this Colby test, which you did. And when it comes to this stage, of the 2 to 3 people that remain, we typically eliminate about 75% of people. I'm sorry, 25%. Ooh, that'd be terrifying. 25% of people, leaving only about 75% of people who get to this stage make it through, which means we're left with somewhere between 1 and 2 candidates at the very bottom, sometimes 3, but we usually aim at about 2. So check this out. Give yourself a pat on the back and a high five. From me to you, you are actually in the top 2% of everybody who looked at the ad that you saw to come all the way through. And you've proven yourself every step along the way. How exciting is that, right? So now that you understand kind of some of the process and some of the numbers, and you see how kind of rigorous we are in deciding who we're interested in working with, the next thing you need to know is 99.9999999% of entrepreneurs out there have no idea about this kind of process, and they'll work with just anyone. Furthermore, they have no idea about the Colby score. So an entrepreneur is typically something like a like 5.383 or something like that, whereas you are a something like a 7.733. Now you may not be exactly that score, but you're something similar to it. And because assistants have no idea about this Colby score, and entrepreneurs have no idea about this Colby score, it's like look at all the ways this is doomed to fail from the beginning. First of all, entrepreneurs will work with kind of almost anyone because they don't have this kind of vetting process in place. Secondly, entrepreneurs don't even know their own Colby score, and so they don't know the crazy ways that they show up. So you as a 7.733 or something close to that, we know that you are detail oriented. We know that you also really like structure and systems. We also know that you don't really like to change direction too much or take any huge risks. And we also know that if you're this 3 here, that you're probably suited to some kind of virtual work. Whereas the entrepreneur actually prevents too much structure and system and is very comfortable with risk and changing direction. So compared to you, they're very, very different. And the thing is they desperately need you with this wonderful strength to kind of make order of their world and help keep them in place. And now you understand why we say, if you create checklists for your husband, you're going to be great for this role, because entrepreneurs who have this working instinct, they're phenomenal at coming up with a ton of ideas and taking risks and just going for it. Don't need too much of a plan either. Don't need too much plan, too much order, too much structure. Let's just make it up on the fly. And that's helped them to be successful up until this point. However, now they need a very different instinct to come along and to help bridge the gap, to help them so that they don't become a prisoner of this incredibly messy, world that they create. And all of this is real. All of this we see playing out day in and day out. And yet, for people who do not have the processes and the onboarding and the training and everything that we have, they fly blind. And it's so unfortunate, because this is what I hear happening, because I hang out with a lot of entrepreneurs and I speak at entrepreneurial events, so I'm constantly interacting with entrepreneurs. And this is what I've heard far too many times, and it really makes me sad, is The executive assistant throws their name into a few hiring websites. The entrepreneur, executive assistant or virtual assistant, they meet. Congratulations, they meet. They're both excited. They both have the same goals. They want to work together for a while. They want to, be this powerhouse team where they're able to do incredible things together. So everybody's happy. But then the entrepreneur says to the executive assistant, let's get started. And the executive assistant says, sure, I'm excited. Let's get going. What would you like me to start on? And the entrepreneur says, well, work on my website. And the executive assistant says, okay, well, that sounds fine, but I've never done that before. Do you have any training? And the entrepreneur says, well, I don't. Just Google it. Make it up on the fly. And the executive assistant says, and in this exact moment, their high follow-through is looking for a plan, but the entrepreneur doesn't have it because they actually prevent too much structure. Secondly, the executive assistant doesn't like having to improvise too much on the fly, and that's exactly what the entrepreneur is asking them to do, is just improvise, make it up on the fly. And so this is okay in the short term for the executive assistant. They're not a 0 in quick start, they are a 3, so they've got a little bit of that make it up on the fly energy, but within a few weeks, the cracks start to show and frustrations start to mount. And the entrepreneur looks at the executive assistant and just says, in their head, says, why the heck do you ask so many questions? Why are you so worried about the plan? Why do you need structure? Just make it up on the fly. And the executive assistant looks at the entrepreneur and says, you are a royal mess. Your Dropbox folder is a total disaster. You do not name files in any kind of consistent way. I can't live with this. And before you know it, frustration mounts. They judge each other as being a mess, and they break up. And it's very unfortunate because here's an executive assistant who is a good person and an entrepreneur who is a good person. An executive assistant with tons of talents to offer and a passionate goal to find a way to make this executive assistant thing work. And an entrepreneur who has a lot of talent and wisdom and skills as an entrepreneur and also would love to see this work. And yet it all falls apart, and it didn't need to. Now, that's where I saw our Great Assistant program could be invented to bridge the gap between the two sides. With our Great Assistant program, we act as this bridge in this very challenging and difficult startup phase between the two sides. And a big part of it is setting you up for success from the get-go. And that's why we take only 2% of everybody who applies to be a part of our program. And we know that we have just the right Colby score with just the right person who has just the right goals and enough of the right kind of personality that we're looking for to do this kind of work. Down the road, you will see that these differences in your Colby scores are actually one of the greatest gifts possible between the two of you. When you're aware of each other's differences, now where your entrepreneur is kind of flying by the seat of their pants, you can bring some stability. And where you like things to be, even Steven all the time, the entrepreneur can help you to discover new ways of doing things. And together it becomes very synergistic. The problem is not that there's differences. The problem is that you guys don't have a way to bridge the differences. And especially in that first all crucial 30 to 90 days when you get started, there has to be some way to bridge the gap between the two of you. It's a conative gap. It's a different, this gap in your Colby scores. It's also a gap in training, in confidence, and trust. And so that's why we came along, and I came along and invented this Great Assistant concept, is to say we're going to match people properly with their Colby scores. Furthermore, we're going to actually create training for this executive assistant so that they can get all the basics of what they need. Things, and some of this may seem simple, but it's like how to submit a daily report, how to prepare a weekly meeting for your entrepreneur. What is the ideal set of tools for working from home? Is there a certain number of kind of pieces of software or apps or services that you should use? And so we outline all of that in this training that we've created. It's all online. So you can study it in the evenings or whenever you've got breaks in your day. And furthermore, we also help you to get onboarded with your entrepreneur with all the specific tools that they'll use Different people use different tools for their marketing platforms or their CRM, and we help you to also get onboarded with that. So, if you do in fact make it through and you make it into our Great Assistant program, you're actually supported by all of this training and onboarding that we've created through Great Assistant. And your entrepreneur has actually paid a fair bit of money, not only to meet you, but also for us to take on this work of training you and preparing you for your first day working with your entrepreneur. Now, it actually doesn't stop there, though, because we also provide training to the entrepreneur. As funny as that sounds, yeah, the entrepreneur, like maybe you might be the first assistant they've ever had. And the entrepreneur needs some support because they don't instinctively think about structure, and they don't instinctively think about delegating in a really high-end professional and complete kind of way. They more think about just make it up on the fly. And yes, you will get to a point where you can handle a lot more on the fly. In the beginning, though, we need to find a way to get what's in this entrepreneur's brain and get it down on paper or down into like Google Drive, right, an online tool, and transfer it over to you. So not only does this entrepreneur do like kind of 4 to 6 hours of homework approximately of training, we actually also give them about 4 hours of homework to complete. And these are exercises like, defining your core values so that their executive assistant, which may be you, can understand what's most important to the entrepreneur. It's things like come up with the first 5 tasks you want to delegate to your executive assistant. It's a specific way of delegating called 360 delegation, and helping the entrepreneurs to put pen to paper and to think through what it is they're delegating. So by the time it makes it to you as the executive assistant, you actually are getting the plan, the structures, the resources, the vision, the definition of done that is so important to you, especially when you're just getting your feet underneath you with your entrepreneur and you're just gaining the all crucial skills and confidence to help you hit the ground running. And so our goal with the Great Assistant program is to really not only make sure it's a great match, but also bridge the gap between you and your entrepreneur so that by the time you guys meet each other, which is going to be just in a week or two from now, you guys can actually have all of this set up and you can hit the ground running. You can avoid all these landmines where all this frustration, where seeds of frustration can grow and just fester and just become a bigger round of resentment with each passing week. We want to help bridge the gap. Now, it would be naive for me to believe that, through Great Assistant, we can circumvent all problems that are going to happen, or that we're going to give you perfect training, or that the entrepreneur is going to provide perfect leadership. Absolutely, I already know that that's not realistic. I also know, though, that this dramatically increases the likelihood of success. And secondly, I also know that I've never seen another program out there that is set up quite like this, that offers quite the comprehensive onboarding training and basically like a white glove service to bring the assistant and the entrepreneur together. So now, whether you end up making it through in our Great Assistant program and whether or not you make it on through to getting an entrepreneur, I'll just say this. If you decide to work from home and you do find an entrepreneur one way or the other, be absolutely certain that you find out what their Colby score is, and make sure that you know what yours is, and also make sure that you can get some kind of guidance on onboarding and training and delegation. And even if you don't make it through the high-end program that we have here with Great Assistant, you can do yourself a massive favor to yourself and to your entrepreneur by suggesting and guiding to them that they come up with a handful of tasks for you to start with. Consider sending your entrepreneur over to profitfactory.com/360 delegation. And that is a great tool for your entrepreneur to learn how to become a really, really strong delegator. So thanks so much for watching this video. I hope that you can see why most entrepreneur assistant relationships actually fail and what you can do about it. And I hope you can also see how Great Assistant, our program, has all of that already built in and allows you to basically shortcut your way to the maximum possible possibility to be successful in, working from home as an executive assistant to an entrepreneur. I look at my working relationship with Sarah, and I was so touched. One day, this is about a year ago, she texted me a picture, and it was her playing in her backyard with her kids. And she texted me and she said, "You know what, Tim? This is why I work with you. Um, I help you build your dream with your business because you help me build my dream with my family." And in that moment, I was just so touched and so impacted, and it really became so real as far as what's possible when there's a functional, healthy, adaptive, solid, foundationally relationship between an assistant and an entrepreneur. And if I can help more entrepreneurs and assistants build each other's dreams day in and day out, I'm going to feel like I made my little dent in the universe in a good way. So thanks for watching. Incredible things are possible. I'm excited for you on your journey, whether you end up joining our Great Assistant program or not. And yeah, keep on striving for big things. The world's a big, exciting place. And, you never know what's possible until you start knocking on a few doors and testing the limits of just what's out there. Thank you so much. This is Tim Francis, and perhaps I'll see you in the next video.